Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host Sultan M. Hali with another edition of Defense and Diplomacy. The trilateral conference at Istanbul, which comprised Pakistan, Afghanistan and Turkey, as well as the regional conference, have concluded. The punchline evolving out of it is that Pakistan's importance has been highlighted to some extent. But to discuss that, we are honored to have in our studio today Air Marshal Masood Akhtar, welcome sir, and Advocate Tariq Pirzada.
Thank you.
Sir, the conference was labeled as the Heart of Asia Conference, and in fact Afghanistan is being called the bridge to Central Asia, South Asia and so on. How do you look at this particular conference and what it means for Pakistan?
I think for Pakistan means a hell of a lot, positively as well as negatively. Essentially sponsored by Turkey, of course, and co-sponsored by Afghanistan. Surprisingly, Pakistan's name in the sponsorship was not mentioned. And 14 countries from South Asia, and of course there are 5 other groups like European Union and others, and almost over 10 nations, including the Western Europe and so on and so forth, who have attended this. But what goes plus for Pakistan is that the world is gaining cognizance that this is a crucial area which needs to be looked at and troubleshot. What goes against us is, surprisingly, that Turkey also is tending to say that we should fix up the outside first. That means the stakeholders outside Afghanistan and South Asia, and of course within this area, like the Cars, like Russia, like China, like Iran, and then come inwards and settle the crucial issues within Afghanistan. Pakistan stand because we have some very serious security concerns over there, and the world cannot move an inch. I would hate to say move an inch, but cannot move without what happens on the border in between Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, and so on and so forth. So I think Pakistan has stood its ground, and they have said, okay, fair enough, although the communique or whatever details have come today, they say that everybody agrees that no interference within each other's areas, countries. 2, secure, safe, stable and prosperous Afghanistan has to be ensured. But I think Pakistan has stood its ground. It has not been reported, but Pakistan says that first of all, solve the internal problem, and then we can look after the stakes of everybody outside. Whereas the others are standing their ground, but I think Pakistan would win this case.
Right. You agree with the Air Marshal, I suppose?
Well, I do want to make a couple of observations over here. Number one, it has taken the United States about 10 years to formally recognize the political and strategic role of Pakistan vis-a-vis Afghanistan. That's the key thing. We did play a military role in one form or the other on our side with the United States intelligence, but the political and strategic role was never formally recognized. So that has been done, and it has taken, again, the United States about 10 years. So a major plus for Pakistan, and I think a little, not a great thing for the United States. I'm glad that they realized that they have to recognize that. Number 2, the essential thing is this, what I noticed in the statement of the Foreign Minister, Hina Rabbani Kar, that Pakistan is an important and responsible state committed to the security and integrity of Afghanistan. But right before this comment, she made a generalized reference to these participating countries, that just other countries, all other countries can facilitate the process. But Pakistan, she said, is an important country, and it is responsible for the, I mean, that was the reference that she made.
And
very good.
Additionally, if you recall, the Indian delegate pointed out, Mr. Krishna, that there is a need for a fresh framework for security, and Hina Rabbani Kar shot it down.
And she shot it down by saying, and rightly so, and I fully endorse it, that the existing mechanisms are here, and the most important mechanism is ECU's mechanism. Economic Cooperation Council that includes Turkey, Egypt, and several other countries, which are not included in other forums. So we don't have to create a new framework, and that was just an attempt by Krishma to sidetrack the issue and to confuse the matters. But that was very articulately, mentioned by Hina Rabbani.
Exactly, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Coming back to you, Air Marshal, and you spent some time in Turkey. I believe you attended the war course there. Turkey is playing a very important role, and it's evolving as a power broker. How do you look at it, sir? Because Turkey is a traditional friend of Pakistan.
Absolutely, and Turkey under the present administration of Erdogan and and Gül, Abdullah Gül has made huge strides. Internally, they have strengthened themselves vis-a-vis the military. The economy is booming. Their foreign policy in the area is doing very well, and so hence this initiative. And Turkey has always been on Pakistan's side and lending strength, although this time they have sponsored this conference and they have gone along with the region that the outside areas also need to have a stake, and that must be solved, number one. But I think internal dialogue between the Pakistani government, the Pakistan army and their military and the government has decided that Pakistan's legitimate concerns must be defended, and Turkey is defending those concerns. And what are those concerns? Number one, Pakistan wants that the Pashtuns are the majority clan and group in Afghanistan, and they must have a due role. Although America wants that leave alone Pashtuns, and of course they would never want to have a Taliban-dominated government. We also don't wish to have a Taliban-dominated government, but Pashtuns must have their say. Pakistan's another concern is that India must not have a dominant role in Afghanistan, especially the military role. Unfortunate that Karzai, he went and signed a strategic agreement with India that about military training that we have been offering. We need to put our house in order. Turkey has stood by us. Turkey is going to stand by us, and I think whatever they may have discussed over there and whatever the communique says, Turkey will always be seen standing by our side.
Right, and if you notice on the sidelines, the Pakistani military went and saw a military exercise, and there have been agreements on joint military exercises to fight terrorism.
And I think it will be, India will not be liking it. Of course, what was said by our friend, that Krishna, he tried to hijack the conference by suggesting an alternate security arrangement, whereas China, Russia, especially because they already have sponsored the Shanghai Cooperation. Shanghai Cooperation, we also are observers, Iranians are there, Indians are there. Chinese would never like that an alternate security arrangement is created, and that will be to our detriment. So probably Pakistan can lend a helping hand to China, that the local collective security organizations could come into play, and that will be to the detriment of the Americans, and that will be a plus for us.
Right. Advocate, you have just returned from Washington, and over the weekend, I suppose you also had the chance to listen to Hillary Clinton's statements to the Congress on the Afghan issue. And this she made just after returning from Pakistan. What was the reaction in Washington?
Hillary went before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and that was a landmark admission of a failure on one hand, and that of the recognition of the role for Pakistan. She said that we are asking Pakistan, and this is what she said to the House Foreign Relations Committee, and this was in the news, covered widely throughout the United States, that we are asking Pakistan now to formally appeal to the Taliban to join the peace process. What a dramatic change in the policy, that the same people that were driven out by the United States are now being now invited to participate through the good offices of Pakistan. Pakistan is not claiming that it can deliver all that, but yes, Pakistan can make a very strong contribution, both on the Haqqani issues, and because remember, we are not, these names like networks of Haqqanis and Talibans, these are negative expressions. These are the people of Afghanistan. They are the citizens of Afghanistan, and their belief and faith is, of course, a part of them. This is a country of Muslim people. So obviously they have to talk within the spectrum.
But sir, my question is, if Hillary Clinton meant business, wouldn't it have been worthwhile to invite some of the Taliban also to be present in this Istanbul regional conference?
There was a speculation just 2 weeks ago that some representatives of Haqqanis and the Taliban would be meeting some officials on the sidelines. But we haven't seen that happen. But because, this is a very important thing, but because there has been a question, there was a question put to Hina Rabbani Kerr, who spoke with APP actually right before the conference. The question was, is Pakistan going to talk to Haqqanis and the Taliban? And she said very clearly and very articulately, she said, that is for the Afghan government and the people to decide on this issue, which means, meaning thereby, that if they decide that Pakistan should play a role on this issue, so be it, and we'll appreciate that. So I think the turf has been laid, and Pakistan ought to be gearing in a big way to play a vital role.
And Pakistan's role has been vitiated, because if you recall, sir, just after the invasion of Afghanistan, Pakistan had suggested then and there to hold a dialogue with the Taliban, because at that time the Taliban were beaten, they were weak, and a dialogue would have emerged, bringing about peace. At that time our words were not adhered to or listened to. But now the same people, after 10 years and after the Taliban have emerged as a force to reckon with, they are being brought to the table.
Not only that, they did not listen to our suggestion at that time, they missed the bus. Number two, they came in with a realist foreign policy, which George W. Bush came up with. Obama, when he came, he tried to dilute it with some ideals, but ground realities, number one, he had not comprehended. Two, a very strong Pentagon and the military, they actually drove the ideas and politics so far as Afghanistan was concerned. But the point I wish to make is that the declaration, whatever has come out of Istanbul, is almost the same language that was drafted and produced in the 2002 declaration on Afghanistan. That Afghanistan should be a neutral country, it should be democratic, it should be stable, it should be prosperous, and that there should be no interference. These were the buzz phrases at that time. This is exactly the language that was produced yesterday. The key is, of course, the 2002 declaration can of course be driven to produce results, number one. Number two, the Silk Route idea is a very viable idea. But before that, Afghanistan needs to be stabilized internally. External stakeholders, their interests also can be looked after. But if America and other nations think that they can thrust upon Afghanistan and especially on Pakistan without addressing our genuine security concerns, it is not going to work. So they have to reach an internal arrangement as to what kind of government, who all will come. For example, they try to drive a wedge between all the Pashtuns and of course the Taliban by forcing us to attack North Waziristan, which we are refusing to do.
And rightly so.
And rightly so. And number two, by saying that only they will talk to Haqqani and not to others, they are still trying to drive a wedge. And Haqqani, very rightly, that group has said that, no, look, alone we will not talk to you. If we have to talk en bloc as a group. So Americans, they have to heed to our advice, settle the things, calm the things within Afghanistan, number one, and only then reach out. India can have a role, but not the kind of role which the Indians, Krishna wish to have, and the Americans wish to give to them to our detriment. And I think we have a big stake, but we are a huge part of the solution, and they cannot ignore us.
Right, and if you notice also, Advocate Tariq Pirzada, one of the aspects of the joint declaration says that Afghanistan will not permit its soil to be used by other countries to destabilize others. And of course, this is a Pakistan-centric statement.
Well, you know one thing, there's a history of relations between India and Pakistan. That's what this whole conversation, this point was all about. It's a history of hostilities, it's a history of wars, it's a history of rivalry. That's what the reality on the ground is. Yes, things are taking a positive turn right now, most favored nation status and this and that. One may say one thing or the other about these developments. But the reality is that India is a strategic partner of the United States. Just in today's news, We are hearing the news about the sale of F-35 Joint Strike Fighter to India. That's a huge technological leap, and that is to the detriment of Pakistan. I mean, one may say there's an India, there's a China, there is some other country, but the real threat to that the Indians look at, the way false, rightly or wrongly, they say they think the threat is from Pakistan. So this changes the balance against us. Trade-wise, technology-wise, everything is going against us. The problem is the United States has no choice but to cooperate with Pakistan on the issue of Afghanistan. Remember 2-3 things about Afghanistan. It's the same landmass. Majority of the people are the same as they are in Pakistan, in the northwest province of Pakistan, called Pakhtunkhwa right now. There's a historical relationship. Pakistan's current identity owes itself to the Afghan people, and right now, Afghan people, for Afghans, Pakistan is the front yard, and for Pakistan, Afghanistan is the front yard if you want to go to Central Asia, or depends on whether you want to go to the Arabian Sea. So Pakistan's centrality is undeniable. So is the centrality of Afghanistan. India is a distant bystander and ought to be a distant bystander. They need to be facilitating, and there should not be any further role for them.
He thinks India should be facilitating and there's no further role, but we believe that some role is being given. Anyway, where do we go from here? By we, I mean Pakistan, because if our role is being recognized, if our importance is being recognized, then we must put our own house in order and make sure that we play the right cards.
That is the way forward. If America wants to do a few things to our detriment, then we need to put our house in order. That is number one. We should have a strong military maneuver, which we have. And that is why whatever gains we have made in Sawat and South Waziristan and elsewhere, with a lot of sacrifices. So we have a strong military maneuver. We need to have an equally strong exterior maneuver. It must be, the policy must be announced, made the belief of the public, and so on and so forth. Likewise, a very strong internal maneuver, meaning thereby everyone keeps saying that the nation must unite in these difficult times, but nobody tells how. Nobody gives a plan how. And the way forward is what? Number one, we should all have the same identity. We must all identify ourselves with the same strategic goals, which is a Pakistan identity. We must have the same common purpose, and we must have one set of vital national interests. We at PISA have, of course, articulated these values and 6 vital national interests. We are wanting to, and we hope we will soon have access to the government. We briefed PMLN, we have briefed the Tariq people. So we are in touch with them. So a very strong internal maneuver so that the nation gets together under one set of ideals. I thought IG Police in Karachi, he put it in true perspective, and that is what the problem is within our country. He said, he told the Chief Justice of Supreme Court that, sir, my hands are tied, that he should be able to pick up and, of course, whoever are the criminals in Karachi, but he's not allowed to by the political parties that are there. If we don't put our house in order, then our exterior maneuver will always be weak and we will lose it out there.
So, Advocate Tariq Pirzada, how do you look at the way forward? The Air Marshal has articulated a number of points, but I would like to hear from you.
3-4 things. Number one, although we know that we have been formally recognized as a lead role player, but a lot of things need to be worked out. The details, the devil lies in the details. The United States has broadly defined what we ought to be doing, that is facilitating and bringing Taliban and Haqqanis on the peace table and convince them to participate in the peaceful solution towards in Afghanistan. But there are lots of things that they have not formally, mentioned. Those details are yet to come. Number one, a very clear, point should be made by the United States that, number one, Pakistan's role has been recognized. Number two, that Pakistan has a huge geographical and demographic interest in Afghanistan, that should never be challenged and should not be compromised because there is a third party called India that is a friend of the United States, strategic partner of the United States. That should be watched also. Number three, Pakistan's trade interest in Afghanistan. Remember, the economy of Afghanistan is not separate from Pakistan's economy. So if you draw a line between the two, you're really creating a false and immature, framework of economic, viability for the Afghanistan. So that should not be done. It's a natural relationship. It should not be hindered in any manner. Fifth, the cultural and other relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan should be promoted and guarded. And so Pakistan's role must remain central, must be recognized. And the fifth thing, any foreign powers other than Pakistan in the region that plays a military role in Afghanistan, that should be very much discouraged, because that is not in the security interest of Pakistan, as Air Marshal has also pointed out.
Right. Let me put to you, sir, one of the tertiary aspects which was discussed, that Afghanistan has finally agreed to Pakistan's long-standing proposal of having biometric facilities
at the border.
At the border.
Very good idea. And in fact, Pakistan's exterior maneuver should also, and I believe de facto we are doing it. We need to put it in writing that Durand Line needs to be recognized and needs to be strengthened as an international border. And I think Americans would like to listen to us, but the Afghans have some reservations on it. Fencing the border is one option. Biometric aids and techniques is another issue. And so that infiltration and exfiltration is made that much more difficult. I think when the Americans went for Operation Knife Edge and the DGMO said that, look, we have put our regular troops over there, this was with a dual purpose. One, that we are stopping the infiltration and exfiltration, but this is a very costly business. And I think if we were to adopt the scientific techniques like the biometrics, etc., it will help a great deal. But what I wish to add is that Pakistan must insist on what all? Number one, that the Pashtuns must be recognized with their due role in Afghanistan. The Taliban, we also should not expect, and we should not insist on a Taliban government. And that will be that will harm us in the long term. But what we should say is that the Northern Alliance should not have a dominant role when Pashtuns are in majority over there. And last of all, India must not have a central role in Afghanistan the way Krishna has been proposing and the way Americans have been approving. The way Advocate Saab has said that they wish to have a strategic relationship with India and a tactical operational relationship with us. We must try and develop a strategic relationship, and the onus is on us, not on them.
Right. So Advocate Tariq Pirzada, as a last point, from here we go to Bonn on 5th of December and then to Chicago on May 2012. What do we look forward to?
Okay. The stage has been set. The negotiations process between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the groups, the Haqqanis, the Taliban, and other groups in Afghanistan. That is now that is the next stage. That's very important. The Bonn conference will come up with some strategic proposals, set proposals, concrete proposals, because this was a confidence-building conference, basically. It was not about a formal set of proposals to be floated and then followed by this. So Bonn will have concrete proposals. That will be the good stage. If everything goes well in Bonn, then we go to Chicago. Over there, maybe the fine print of the resolution of Afghanistan will begin to emerge. I'm not banking that everything will be settled over there too. It is a very complicated process. The parties involved, be it Taliban, be it Haqqanis, be it Northern Alliance, be it several other involved elements, they are all, they have their disagreements within the Afghan society. But I do want to mention one thing. I don't want to quickly lose this point. China has, according to my understanding, for the first time participated in a major way. But they have been quiet. Pakistan should take it very seriously. China should be shared with every, they should be sharing everything with China.
Right.
That should be very important.
I'm afraid we have run out of time. Viewers, with that we come to the end of this debate. And what has come about is that Pakistan's role has finally been not only highlighted but recognized as an important one, and Pakistan needs to play its cards very well. But we need to thank the government of Turkey for sponsoring these and also helping us out in playing our role. I would like to thank you, Air Marshal Masood Akhtar, Advocate Tariq Pirzada, and viewers, keep sending us your comments. Hope to see you next week, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.